After that, he went quiet, and the quiet was the most dangerous thing he had done so far, because no one knew to be afraid of it. He stopped reading ahead so visibly. He let his marks settle to merely very good. He gave Snape nothing to watch but a courteous, unremarkable boy, and he let the 6th year's story go stale in the retelling, the way all stories do, and he waited. And while he waited, he turned the whole of his cold attention onto the thing the castle was so badly pretending it did not have. Because the castle was hiding something. He'd known it vaguely since September, and certainly since the night a door on the 3rd floor corridor had been declared forbidden, in a voice the headmaster meant to sound playful and did not. Children took that sort of announcement as a dare. Harry took it as a confession. You did not bother to forbid an empty room. He assembled it the way he assembled everything, out of the small tells the comfortable people of the world were always leaving lying around for anyone patient enough to gather them. A corridor sealed, a great deal of staff traffic toward a part of the school that was supposed to be disused. Snape, in the 2nd week of term, crossing the entrance hall with his robes not quite hiding a leg he was trying not to favor. A leg that had been, Harry was nearly sure, badly bitten by something kept where things were not supposed to be kept. And over all of it, threaded through the autumn like the high-singing note of the scar, the nervous man in the turban, turning up near that corridor more often than a frightened man with any sense would, drawn to the forbidden door the way Harry himself was drawn to the ache behind his own eyes. The passenger wanted what was behind the door. That was the keystone, and once Harry set it, the whole arch stood up on its own. He did not yet know precisely what the thing was, only that the school had built a fortress of teachers and traps around it, and that a half-dead wraith riding a stammering professor believed it could give him back what he'd lost. Restoration, a body maybe, power certainly. And here Harry sat very still in the library with the snow coming down outside and thought the thought that decided the rest of the book, and the rest of the 7, though he could not have known that part. A restored master would not need him. It was so simple it was almost funny. Every other person in the castle who had glimpsed even a corner of this was busy asking how to keep the dark thing from rising. Harry asked a different question, the only one that had ever interested him, the one the cupboard had carved into him. Where in this is the room where I am not powerless? And the answer arrived cold and complete. A Voldemort, whole and resurrected now, at 11, would simply own him, would find the marked boy a useful trophy and a usefuller tool, and nothing ever like an heir. But a Voldemort kept weak, kept scrabbling, kept dependent, kept riding borrowed skulls and reaching for stones he was never allowed to close his hand around. That was a master a patient boy might stand beside for years, and learn from, and let build, and one day inherit. So Harry's task was not the hero's, though it would wear the hero's face right up to the end. He did not need to keep the wraith from the door forever. He needed only to make certain that when the wraith finally reached through it, its hand closed on nothing, and that the boy standing nearby when it failed was the brave, lucky, slightly overwhelmed boy who lived. The whole world had already agreed he was. He would let it ripen. He was good at letting things ripen. It was only the other kind of patience, the kind with a corpse on the end of it, that he was still learning to afford. He gathered his books and went out of the library into the cold, and did not notice, because even he could not watch every corner of every room, not yet, that he was not the only first year who had been mapping the castle's silences that autumn. 2 tables over, a girl with a great deal of hair had been keeping her own quiet ledger of a forbidden corridor, an a limping professor, and a Slytherin boy who was supposed to be either a hero or a disappointment, and was so plainly, to her at least, neither. She watched him go. She did not yet have a word for what she was assembling. But she was assembling it, page by careful page, and the only mind in the castle pointed the same direction as his. And she was, unlike every adult who had glanced at the truth and looked politely away, entirely unwilling to stop looking. Outside, high in his tower, the old man finally set down his dry pen, and far below the school, a thing that was almost nothing stirred against the inside of a borrowed skull, and turned its weak attention again toward the patient, cold boy who had looked at it without flinching, and wondered for the first time what it was. The trap ripened, as he had known it would, around the turning of the year, and Harry led it. That was the discipline of it, the doing nothing that was the hardest thing he did all year, harder than the dark in the corridor, harder than the flat answer in Snape's dungeon. Every instinct the cupboard had given him wanted to act, to get to the forbidden door first and learn the shape of the thing himself, and every instinct he had decided was a habit, and habits were for people who had not yet learned to be the one who decides. So he sat on his hands through the long white middle of the year and watched the wraith grow bolder behind its borrowed face, and watched the school tighten its careless fortress, and waited for the night the passenger would finally try the door, because a thing that fails to seize what it wants is far more useful to a patient boy than a thing that succeeds, or a thing that never reaches at all. He used the waiting to learn the traps, not to spring them, to know them, the way he knew the exits of every room he had ever been kept in. He learned them the way the comfortable people of the world were always letting their secrets be learned. A word overheard, a limp not quite hidden, a half-giant's loose fawned tongue loosened further by the right kind of listening silence. By the time the snow began to thin, he could have walked the whole sunken course of the thing in the dark. The dog, the tangle, the keys, the board, the rest, and he understood, with the cold pleasure of a boy reading a map drawn by people who thought themselves clever, that the school had built its defenses the way it built everything, as a test for a hero. Each guard could be passed by exactly the qualities Gryffindor sang about: courage, loyalty, a clean, clever heart that wanted the right thing for the right reason. It did not seem to have occurred to any of them that the same doors would open just as wide for a boy who wanted the right thing for no reason at all. The last guard was the one he had come for, and it was waiting for him in a bare, cold chamber at the bottom of the school. A tall mirror in a frame of old gold, standing alone, showing the room back to itself, and to anyone who stood before it, something the room did not contain. He had read about it. He had spent 3 weeks reading about it, in the dead lamp dark at the back of the library, once he understood what the final guard had to be, because Dumbledore had built this last lock cleverest of all, and Harry could admire the man's mind even as he picked it. The mirror gave up its secret only to a particular kind of wanting. It would surrender the thing hidden inside it to one who desired to find it and not to use it, to the seeker who wanted the prize kept safe rather than spent. It was a lock that could be opened only by a heart with nothing greedy in it. It was, Harry thought, the most beautiful trap he had ever seen, and the most naive, because it had been designed by a good man who could imagine only 2 kinds of person, the greedy and the pure, and had never once in all his long wisdom thought to account for the third. Harry did not want to use the stone. He wanted it kept from the wraith and nowhere near himself. He wanted the master weak and the door shut and his own hands clean and empty when the lights came up. By the mirror's own strict accounting, his was the purest desire that had ever stood before it. The lock had been cut, unknowingly, exactly to the shape of him. He stepped in front of the glass to see what it would show. For a long moment, it showed him nothing he did not already have. No mother, no father, no warm, impossible family ranged behind him with their hands on his shoulders. He had half expected those, had braced in some cold, clinical way to feel the tug of a grief he had never been allowed, and to have to set it down again. The tug did not come. The glass had no such thing to offer him, because he had stopped wanting it so long ago that the wanting had closed over like skin over a splinter, and the mirror could only show you the door you were still standing at, not the ones you had bricked up yourself. What it showed him instead, slowly, the way deep water gives up a shape, was a boy who looked exactly like the boy standing in front of it. Older, unhurried, standing somewhere high and quiet, with the whole gray weather of the world moving below him, and at his feet, leashed and patient and terribly diminished, a thing with no face that had once made grown men afraid to say its name. The boy in the glass was not afraid of it. The boy in the glass had never, the whole length of his life, been afraid of anything in a room again. He was simply the one who decided. That was all. That was everything. Harry looked at his heart's desire for a long, level moment, and felt his pocket grow heavy, and did not smile, because there was no one in the cold chamber to see a smile, and a thing done for no audience was a thing wasted. He took the stone out and looked at it. Small, red, unremarkable. The most coveted object in the wizarding world, sitting dull in a boy's palm like a sweet, and put it away again, and turned from the mirror without any particular feeling, and went to wait in the dark for the man who would come to die.